The grand hall of the alien corporation shimmered with strange blue lights, its walls alive with flowing energy patterns. Dozens of alien leaders gathered around a long crystal table, each one a symbol of power in the galaxy. Their voices filled the air with a mixture of hisses, growls, clicks, and sharp words, translated by machines into neutral tones. At the edge of this great hall, a man pushed a mop slowly across the shining floor. His name was Daniel, a human. Janitor working quietly, unnoticed by most. He wore a plain uniform, his head slightly bowed. His job was simple: keep the floors clean and stay invisible. That was exactly what he did every day. And no one ever paid him attention, but today was different. The meeting was more tense than usual. An alien executive, tall and covered in silver scales, slammed a clawed hand on the table. He began to speak in a language that none of the translator devices could understand. The machines hissed and buzzed, trying to catch the meaning, but nothing came. The other aliens grew restless, confused, and irritated. "This is a waste of time," one alien muttered. "Why bring us here if no one can understand him?" another hissed. The executive continued speaking in his strange tongue, his eyes blazing with authority. It was a rare and ancient dialect, one that only a few in the galaxy even recognized. His words echoed through the hall, sharp and commanding. Daniel paused, his hands tightened on the mop handle. For a long moment, he stood frozen, his eyes lifted from the floor, watching the alien's mouth move. A memory flashed in his mind: long nights under alien skies, strange fires, voices teaching him words that no human was ever meant to hear. The crowd grew louder. The executive's patience thinned. He raised his voice, demanding silence. Still, no translation came. No one dared to answer him. Then, from the back of the hall, a calm voice spoke. The words were fluent, perfect, and matched the alien's tongue. "I understand you," Daniel said. The entire hall froze. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward the human janitor for a moment. Silence hung like a heavy curtain. Daniel let go of the mop, straightened his back, and repeated the executive's words in the same ancient alien dialect. His tone was steady, his pronunciation flawless. Gasps erupted around the table. The translators whirred uselessly, unable to believe what they had just heard. Impossible. One alien whispered, "A human cannot speak that tongue." Another spat, but Daniel had spoken it, and not just spoken it, was as natural as breathing to him. The executive's cold eyes widened. He stared at the human with disbelief. He asked a sharp question in the same alien tongue, testing him. Without hesitation, Daniel replied again. His words were not broken, not clumsy, but precise and deep. With meaning, the executive leaned forward, studying every detail of Daniel's face. The janitor's simple uniform looked laughable now. Compared to the weight of the language on his tongue, whispers spread across the room. Some aliens leaned in closer, their curiosity lit like fire. Others narrowed their eyes with suspicion. The idea of a human just a janitorno in such a sacred dialect was unthinkable. It was not only strange, it was dangerous. "Who are you really?" a reptilian alien demanded. Daniel's eyes flickered, but he said nothing. The executive slammed his hand down again. "Answer him," he commanded in the alien language. Daniel looked around at all the eyes staring at him. He could feel the weight of suspicion pressing against his chest. He could feel the fear, too. Fear of revealing too much. Fear of the truth that had lived hidden inside him for years. "I am no one," Daniel finally said in the alien tongue, his voice calm but carrying a strange power. "I only listen." The room was unsettled. The other aliens whispered louder. Some wanted to throw him out. Others wanted to question him further. The executive, however, did not speak. He only stared at Daniel as if he were looking at a puzzle that should not exist. The janitor bent down, picked up his mop again, and continued cleaning the floor. His movements slow and steady. But the silence in the hall told him one thing: life would never return to normal after this moment. For the first time, Daniel was not invisible. For the first time, every alien in that room saw him. And none of them could believe what had just happened. The grand hall remained silent long after Daniel's voice faded. The mop in his hand squeaked softly against the polished floor, but no one cared about the floor anymore. All eyes stayed locked on the human janitor who had just spoken like a native of an ancient alien tongue. The executive leaned back in his chair, his silver scales shining under the blue lights. His piercing eyes never left Daniel. It was not anger, not yet, but something deeper: curiosity mixed with fear. Who taught you this language? The executive demanded again, his voice low and sharp. Daniel did not answer. He dipped the mop back into the bucket as if the question meant nothing. His silence spread like poison through the hall. Whispers erupted. He must be a spy, hissed one insect-like alien. No human should know this speech. Growled another, with tusks curving from his jaw. This is dangerous, whispered a third, her voice trembling. The suspicion grew heavy. Some aliens stood from their seats, their weapons flashing faintly. Their eyes carried distrust and fear. For them, a human who could speak an ancient tongue meant secrets that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The executive raised a hand, demanding silence. The room calmed, but the tension did not. His voice came again, strong and commanding. Human, you will explain how you know this tongue. If you refuse, we will take you by force. Daniel finally stopped moving. He straightened his back and looked at the executive with steady eyes. His voice was calm when he spoke. Some truths are better hidden, he said, still in the alien dialect. The words only made the room more unsettled. The aliens murmured again, louder than before, to them. His refusal was not an answer. It was a challenge. One alien officer stepped forward. His armor gleamed dark red, and his eyes glared with hostility. This human is lying, the officer declared. I say we seize him, question him, and learn the truth. He cannot be trusted. The executive lifted his claw, stopping the officer. He studied Daniel more closely, searching his face for deception. Yet what he saw was not fear. It was not arrogance either. It was something stranger: acceptance, as if Daniel already knew what this moment would bring. The whispers of the council turned into arguments. Some shouted for Daniel to be locked away. Some demanded to test his knowledge. Others said perhaps the human should be honored for knowing what no other human did. The hall became a storm of suspicion, but Daniel stood quiet. His hands rested calmly on the mop handle. His face gave nothing away inside, though his heart was heavy. He remembered nights long ago when he first learned the alien words. They were not just sounds to him, they were memories. They were promises he had made to a dying people. Promises he had kept by staying silent all these years. The executive finally spoke again. His voice cut through the noise. We will not decide now, he said, but we will watch him closely. Daniel lowered his eyes once more. He returned to cleaning the floor, yet he knew the truth. He was no longer invisible. Every step he took, every breath, would now be followed by suspicion. The officer who had shouted earlier did not sit down. His gaze stayed locked on Daniel. His expression was sharp and hungry. As if waiting for the smallest mistake, Daniel felt the weight of that stare, heavy like chains. From that moment, the janitor's quiet life was gone. The hall no longer saw him as harmless. He had become a question that demanded answers. When the meeting ended, the aliens left in groups. Still arguing about him, the executive left last, but before he walked through the great silver doors, he looked back at Daniel one final time. The human was still pushing his mop, but his eyes glowed with something deeper than anyone could see. The executive whispered to himself, "This human is more than he appears. We must find out what he hides." The doors closed, and Daniel was alone in the hall. His reflection shone faintly on the polished floor. He stared at it, his own face looking back at him. He spoke softly to himself in the alien tongue. Words no machine could translate. "I will not let the past destroy the future," he said. The silence of the empty hall swallowed his words, but the shadows seemed to listen, waiting. Daniel walked back to his small quarters that night. His room was nothing more than a narrow chamber with a single bed, a table, and a broken lamp. He sat on the edge of the bed, his mop resting against the wall. His mind was heavy with the whispers and stares of the alien council. He closed his eyes, and memories came flooding back. The gift he carried was not something learned in books or machines. It was something earned the hard way. Through years of survival, long ago, Daniel had been part of a small human crew. Their ship had crashed on a distant world, far beyond the maps of Earth. Only he had survived. The planet was strange, covered with forests of crystal trees and skies painted in 3 colors. At first, Daniel had thought he was alone. But then he had met them, an alien tribe. Their skin glowed faintly in the dark, and their voices were filled with music. They were not warriors, but keepers of knowledge. They had no translators, no devices, only the power of spoken word at first. Daniel could not understand them. They spoke in a tongue that twisted and flowed like water. He listened, he repeated. He stumbled. For months, he struggled to survive, learning their ways little by little, but the tribe did not turn him away. They fed him, taught him, taught him, and gave him shelter. Slowly, their language became his. The sounds shaped his tongue. The meanings shaped his heart. It was not just speaking, it was becoming one of them. One night, under the glowing sky, the elder of the tribe had placed a hand on his shoulder. She spoke words that burned into Daniel's memory forever. "You will carry our voice when we are gone," she said. He had not understood the weight of those words until later. When sickness came, it swept through the tribe like fire. One by one, they faded, leaving him alone. Their voices became whispers in his mind. He buried them with his own hands, and with each grave, he whispered their words to the stars. By the time a passing ship found him and carried him away, Daniel was no longer just human. He was something else. He carried the gift of their language, their memory, their soul. He promised himself he would keep it hidden, a secret too precious to be used for profit or pride. But now, in that grand hall, he had broken his promise. The words had slipped from his tongue because silence had become impossible. And now the galaxy's eyes were upon him. Daniel opened his eyes again. His room was dark. The broken lamp flickered once before dying. He lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. He knew tomorrow would bring more suspicion, more questions. But deep inside, he also knew the truth, his hidden gift was no longer hidden. The next morning, as Daniel returned to his work, he felt eyes following him. Aliens in the halls whispered as he passed. Some looked at him with fear, others with curiosity, a few with quiet respect. The officer in red armor, the one who had demanded Daniel be seized, followed him like a shadow. Every step Daniel took, the officer was close behind, his gaze sharp, searching for weakness. Later that day, Daniel was summoned again to the grand hall. This time, the executive stood alone at the crystal table. His silver scales reflected the light like polished metal. "You lived with them, didn't you?" the executive said, his voice softer now. "The ones who spoke that ancient tongue." Daniel said nothing. He only tightened his grip on the mop. The executive narrowed his eyes. "That tribe is gone. I erased from history. No records remain, no voices, no songs. Only silence, and yet, here you stand, speaking like one of them." Daniel's chest ached. The images of the glowing tribe filled his mind. The songs, the laughter, the firelight. He whispered softly, almost too low for the executive to hear. They are not gone, not while I still speak for them. The executive studied him for a long moment, then he leaned closer, lowering his voice. Be careful, human. Some will see your gift as dangerous. Others will see it as power, and power is never safe. Daniel nodded once. His face calm, but inside, his heart burned with memory and quiet sorrow. When he left the hall, he knew the say. Storm was only beginning. His hidden gift had returned to the light, and nothing could bury it again in the shadows. The officer in red armor watched him leave. His eyes gleamed with a mix of hatred and hunger. He whispered to himself, this human secret will not stay his for long. I will uncover it, and I will use it. Daniel walked on, unaware of the dark game already beginning behind him. His steps were steady. But the ground beneath him felt less certain. The past had returned, and the future was waiting. The grand hall was quiet when Daniel entered again. The executive had summoned him, and this time the seats were full. Alien leaders from different worlds sat around the crystal table, their eyes locked on the human janitor. The whispers had not faded since the last meeting. They had only grown sharper. Daniel carried no weapons, no armor, just the same mop in his hands. He looked out of place, yet there was a weight in the air around him, a tension that made every alien cautious. The executive rose slowly, his silver scales shining under the light, his gaze fixed on Daniel. You claim nothing, he said, his voice strong, yet you carry something no other human does today. We will know the truth. Daniel's grip tightened on the mop. He did not reply. The executive lifted a glowing tablet. The device projected symbols into the air. Strange curved lines of the ancient alien language, the council murmured. For these were words not spoken in centuries. Translate this, the executive commanded. Daniel stepped closer. His eyes traced the symbols. His lips moved silently. He knew them, not just as words, but as memory. They were proverbs he had once heard around a fire, spoken by voices that now lived only in his mind. He spoke, his voice steady, stone may break, but song endures. The heart carries what stone cannot. The words echoed across the hall. The council stirred. Some looked shocked, others uneasy. The translation machines clicked and hummed, but failed. They could not process the meaning Daniel gave. The executive narrowed his eyes. You did not just translate, he said slowly, you explained. You gave more than words, you gave meaning. Daniel lowered his gaze. It is not just language, it is life, he answered quietly. The council erupted. Some clapped their hands against the table in admiration. Others shouted in anger. The tension rose like fire. The officer in red armor stood suddenly, his voice sharp. This is proof, he growled. He is no janitor. He is a spy, a danger. I demand he be detained. No, another alien argued. He has knowledge we lost long ago. He must be protected. He may be the only one left who carries it. Voices clashed. Suspicion grew. The executive raised his clawed hand, and silence fell once more. There will be another test, he said, if he truly carries their voice. He will understand the song from the shadows. An alien servant stepped forward, carrying a crystal sphere. Within the sphere glowed a faint light. It was a recording, ancient and fragile. The elder voices of the lost tribe filled the air. Singing in a flowing rhythm, the hall grew still as the melody spread. Haunting and beautiful, the aliens listened but could not follow its meaning. To them, it was noise, strange and distant. Daniel's eyes closed, his chest tightened. For him, it was not noise, it was memory. He could see the glowing tribe again, sitting in circles, their voices lifting under the painted sky. He felt the warmth of their fire, the sorrow of their... Loss's voice joined the song, soft at first, then stronger. His words blended with the ancient recording, filling the hall with a harmony so pure it silenced all doubt. The janitor sang like one of them. When he finished, the hall was silent. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the officer in red armor could not find his voice. The executive's eyes gleamed with something close to awe. "You are not lying," he said slowly. "You are their echo, their living voice." Daniel lowered his head, his voice calm but heavy. "I am nothing. I only remember." The words chilled the council. For a human to carry such a legacy was beyond their understanding. But not everyone was moved by respect in the shadows. The officer clenched his fists. His eyes burned with jealousy. He had wanted the human to fail, to be exposed as a fraud instead. Daniel had proven something far more dangerous. He was real. That night, as the council ended, Daniel returned to his quarters. He sat in the dark, his mop leaning in the corner. His heart was heavy. He knew the more he revealed, the more the galaxy would demand from him in another room. The officer in red armor whispered into a communicator. "He passed their test, but I will find his weakness. No one carries secrets without breaking. I will uncover his past, and when I do, he will fall far away." The executive stood alone by the crystal table. His silver scales reflected the fading light. His voice was low as he whispered to himself, "This human may be the bridge we need, or the fire that burns us all." The storm was growing, and Daniel was standing in its center. The corridors of the alien corporation buzzed with rumors after Daniel's test. Everywhere he walked, whispers followed. Some aliens stepped aside when he passed, bowing their heads in quiet respect. Others glared at him with suspicion, muttering that a human had no right to carry such knowledge. Daniel ignored them. He carried his mop and bucket as always, his steps calm, his face quiet, yet inside he knew the peace would not last. Late that evening, as the stars outside the massive windows shifted across the black sky, Daniel felt a presence behind him. The executive stood there, tall and sharp, his silver scales gleaming faintly in the dim light. "We need to talk," the executive said. Daniel set down his mop. "About what?" he asked, his voice steady. The executive's eyes narrowed. "There is a danger growing inside this hall. Something you should know, something only you may stop." Daniel frowned, but said nothing. The executive stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There are factions among Quees. Our factions among U.S. Some want peace, some want war. And now, some want you gone. They will not stop until they find a way to silence you. They see your voice as power, and power makes enemies." Daniel's chest tightened. He had expected suspicion, even fear, but he had not expected this. "Why tell me this?" he asked quietly. "Because," the executive replied, "your gift may be the only way to expose them. The traitors use codes hidden in speech, phrases buried in the old language. Our machines cannot read them. Our ears cannot catch them, but you can." Daniel looked away. His mind raced. The thought of becoming part of their conflict weighed heavily on him. He had never wanted power, never wanted to stand in the center of politics and war. All he wanted was to keep the memory of the lost tribe alive, quietly, in his heart. But now, silence was no longer enough. The executive leaned closer. "If you refuse, they will destroy you. If you accept, you may save more than yourself." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He could hear again the voice of the tribe elder. The night she had placed her hand on his shoulder. "You will carry our voice. When we are gone," his eyes opened, calm and firm. "I will help," he said. The executive nodded, but his face showed no relief, only tension. He knew the danger was growing, and now Daniel was walking straight into it. The very next day, the council gathered again. This time, the air felt different, heavy, charged, like the moment before a storm. The aliens spoke of treaties, of peace, of alliances, but Daniel could hear something else beneath their words. Hidden meanings, secret signals. The traitors were speaking in the cracks of language, passing messages no machine could catch. Daniel's eyes sharpened. His ears caught every subtle twist. Every hidden code. He could feel the shape of betrayal forming in the air. Why? At one point, a tall alien with dark wings spoke in a calm voice about trade routes, but Daniel caught the word buried in his speech. A word that meant strike, a word that meant war. He knew now this was no rumor. There truly was a plot, and it was unfolding right before their eyes. The executive glanced at him from across the table, a silent question in his stare. Did you hear it? Daniel gave the faintest nod. The truth was now clear. But the danger of speaking it aloud was greater than silence. The officer in red armor, still watching him with sharp suspicion, leaned closer and hissed, "What do you hear, human? Tell us, or prove you are the liar I believe you to be." Daniel ignored him. His mind was racing. The words of the traitors were not just warnings. They were instructions, a plan to sabotage the talks, a plan to spill blood inside these very halls. Later, when the council ended, Daniel was pulled aside by the executive. "You heard them," the alien leader said firmly. Not asking, but knowing, Daniel nodded. "They will strike soon. They will use the talks as their cover." The executive's face darkened. "Then we must move quickly, or peace will die here before it begins." In the shadows of the corridor, the officer in red armor listened. His eyes glowed with something dangerous. Not only had the human revealed himself as useful, he had also revealed himself as a target. That night, Daniel sat alone in his quarters, his mop resting against the wall, his heart heavy. He had tried to live quietly. He had tried to remain invisible, but now the galaxy's battles were forcing him into the light. He whispered to himself in the ancient tongue, "I will not let them win." The shadows outside his door shifted. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes were watching. The traitors knew their secret was at risk, and the human janitor had become their greatest threat. The night was restless inside the alien headquarters. The corridors glowed with dim lights, and guards patrolled in silence. Yet beneath the calm surface, danger moved like a shadow. Daniel walked slowly, his mop balanced on his shoulder, his face calm, but his heart beating heavy. He could feel it now, the plot tightening, the traitors preparing to strike. Their words had been too clear, too sharp, for him to ignore. The executive had summoned him to a private chamber. It was a vast room with walls of living crystal, glowing softly as if listening. The silver-scaled leader stood there, tall and stern, his eyes sharp as blades. They will make their move. Tonight, the executive said in a low voice, if they succeed, peace will collapse, and blood will flood this hall. Daniel nodded slowly. His eyes carried no fear, only quiet resolve. I heard their code, he replied. They will use the council gathering as their signal. They will turn words into weapons. The executive studied him for a long moment, then stepped closer. And you, human, will you stand against them? Daniel lowered his eyes. His grip tightened on the mop handle. I have no choice, he whispered. The doors opened, and the officer in red armor strode in. His presence filled the room with cold hostility. He looked at Daniel like a predator. So, the officer growled. The janitor claims he can save us. A man with a mop will stop traitors with blades. Daniel said nothing. His silence was his shield. But inside, he felt the weight of the coming storm. The council gathered once more. The grand hall sparkled with light, but the air was heavy. Aliens from across the stars filled the seats. Their voices rose in debate, but beneath the surface, Secret signals passed. Daniel could hear them hidden phrases, old words twisted into commands. Then it happened. A sudden shout cut through the chamber. A winged alien rose to his feet, his hand reaching for a hidden blade. The guards moved. Chaos burst like fire. Daniel stepped forward. His voice thundered in the ancient dialect. "Stop," he commanded. The word carried power. It was not just a sound. It was the echo of a forgotten tribe. It struck the traitors like a hammer. Freezing them for a moment, the council fell silent. All eyes turned to Daniel. The winged alien snarled. "You dare," he hissed. "A human speaks like a master. But you are nothing." Daniel's eyes hardened. He answered in the traitor's own tongue. Revealing the hidden code they had used, his words laid bare their plan. Every alien in the room now understood. There was no more hiding, no more secrets. The hall exploded into chaos. The traitors drew weapons. The guards fought back. Daniel stood in the center, his mop cast aside, his voice cutting through the storm. He shouted in the ancient language, breaking the traitors' codes, twisting their own words against them. One by one, their hidden signals failed. Their plans shattered. They grew desperate, but the council now saw the truth Daniel had unmasked. Them? The officer in red armor suddenly stepped forward. For a moment, it seemed he would fight with the council. But his eyes betrayed him. He turned his weapon toward Daniel. "You should never have spoken," the officer spat. "Your voice is too dangerous to live." The executive moved, but too late. The weapon fired. Daniel staggered. The energy blast, grazing his shoulder, he fell to one knee, but his voice did not break. With pain burning in his chest, he rose again. "You cannot silence them," Daniel said, his voice strong. "Their words live through me." The hall trembled as his voice filled it once more. His words carried memory, sorrow, and power. The traitors faltered, their strength breaking. Guards seized them, dragging them down. The rebellion collapsed under the weight of a single human voice. The officer in red armor roared in anger, but the executive's claws struck him down, his betrayal exposed, his ambition destroyed. Silence fell at last. The traitors were gone. The hall secured. The council stared at Daniel, some with awe, some with fear. His shoulder burned with pain, but he stood tall. The executive stepped forward, his eyes softer now. "You are no janitor," he said quietly. "You are the bridge between us." Daniel shook his head, his voice low but firm. "I am only their echo." The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. The battle was over, but its cost was clear. The human who wished to remain invisible had become the center of the galaxy's storm. The Grand Hall was silent after the battle. The smell of burned metal and scorched air still lingered. Guards dragged the last of the traitors away. Their heads bowed in defeat. The shattered codes, the broken plans, all lay ruined in the wake. Of a human voice, Daniel stood in the center, his mop lying forgotten on the floor. His shoulder burned where the officer's weapon had struck him, but he did not falter. His breathing was heavy. Yet his eyes were steady. The council stared at him, unable to see him as the same man they once ignored. The executive approached slowly, his silver scales glowing under the crystal lights. He looked at Daniel as though he were seeing not just a man, but a mirror of something greater. "You saved this hall," the executive said softly. "Without you, peace would already be broken." Daniel shook his head, his voice calm. "I only spoke. Their words lived through me. I could not let them be twisted into lies." The council murmured among themselves. Some nodded in respect, others whispered in unease. For them, the truth was difficult. How could a human janitor carry what their machines and leaders had lost? Then the executive turned, his voice rising with authority. This human is no spy, no fraud. He is proof that voices of the past can still live. He is the bridge between us. Applause echoed through the hall. Slow at first, then stronger. Some aliens pounded their fists against the table. Others lifted their hands high. Even those who feared him could not deny what they had witnessed. Daniel bowed his head slightly. He felt the weight of their respect, but also the burden it carried. He had never wanted to stand in their light. He had only wanted to live quietly, to remember in silence after the meeting ended. Daniel returned to his small quarters. The mop leaned against the wall as always. His bed sat in the corner, plain and worn. He sat down and let out a long breath. The hall had changed, the council had changed. But inside his heart, he still felt the same. Later that evening, the executive came to him. The silver-scaled leader entered without guards, his presence filling the small room. "You could take a place among us," the executive said. "The council would give you honor, wealth, even command. You have earned it." Daniel looked at the broken lamp on his table, the quiet shadows in the room. His voice was steady when he replied, "I do not need titles. I do not need power. I only need to keep the voice alive. Nothing more." The executive studied him for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why you were chosen. Not by us, but by fate." Word of the humans spread beyond the council, across star systems, across colonies. Stories of the janitor who spoke like a native carried through ships and marketplaces. Some told it as legend, others as warning, but all listened. Weeks later, when Daniel walked through the halls, aliens stepped aside, not in suspicion, but in quiet respect. Some bowed. Others whispered greetings in their own tongues, and sometimes Daniel would answer them in their dialects. Each time, their eyes widened with surprise and wonder, but Daniel never sought their praise. He continued his work, cleaning the floors, walking silently through the grand hall, yet no one saw him as invisible anymore. He was more than a janitor now. He was a reminder that humans were not weak, not blind. They could carry voices. They could bridge worlds. One evening, as the stars shone beyond the great windows, Daniel stood alone in the empty hall. His reflection shimmered on the polished floor. He closed his eyes and whispered in the ancient tongue, "You are not forgotten." The words were soft, but they filled the space. They carried memory, sorrow, and hope, the echoes of a tribe long gone lived again in his voice. Behind him, the executive entered quietly. He did not interrupt, he only listened when Daniel finished. The alien leader spoke in a low voice. "The galaxy will never see humans the same again." Daniel gave a faint smile. He picked up his mop, returning to his silent work, for though the galaxy saw him as more, he would remain what he had always been, a keeper of voices, a man who remembered. The hall glowed softly as he worked, and in that light, the respect of two worlds rested quietly on his shoulders.